But the idea is that if they have a maximum ban and they're going to return, and this is for the people who don't plan to clean up their behavior, hopefully we can incentivize them to where they can return to the social media platform, but every time they come back and they do the same behavior, they're banned right away. And I think this could be easily done. Last week I talked about how I think maximum bans is a good idea for social media platforms. And what made me come to that idea is there's this thing called maximum sentencing, popularized by Norway, where they have maximum sentences for, I think, all of their crimes. So, for example, if you murder someone, the maximum amount of time you can get is 20 years for that singular crime. And the idea is well, it's predicated on the idea that, for the most part, people who commit crimes, they're just in a high crime demographic. So, like 20-year-olds. They're the most likely to commit crime. So if you take them in, if you arrest these criminals at 20 years old and keep them in for 20 years, they'll get to 40, and they'll be in a much less crime-prone demographic. And so the idea is that maximum sentences incentivize the prison system, the corrections system, the criminal correction system, to shift from punishment in housing criminals to improving criminals, to become respectful and productive citizens, because these criminals are probably going to be leaving prison. And also, just so we're clear, if you committed, say, like 4 murders, you're probably gonna get like 4 murders. You're gonna get 80 years in prison, so you're probably not gonna be coming out. I think most of us would agree that's probably a good idea if you killed that many people. But as I was looking at maximum sentencing, I kind of decided this isn't it's not a good parallel to the dynamics of social media platforms and the way they ban. And that's because realistically, there absolutely would be practical concern to give lifetime bans on social media platforms to those offending users who aim to turn their social media activity into real-world harm. Because then you're using the social media platform in a way that's obviously not intended to be. So, for example, doxing, swatting, calls to violence, and using the platform to distribute illegal material. And I think most people would agree that if you're trying to turn what's happening on social media into real-world harm, this is probably not good. And I understand that's it's a bit nebulous what we can determine to be real-world harm. You know, me calling you a mean word on Twitter, you could say that hurt my real-world feeling. But the idea is that the freedom of speech would be a great deal more opened up, and it would really just be going after people who are really trying to create real-world. So, you know, physical violence, physical harassment, that kind of stuff. Another way it's not maximum sentencing doesn't relate well to maximum bans is all societies have criminal punishment structures in which criminals are removed from society and returned. All societies have this. No society doesn't have a criminal corrections type system. They obviously vary in some ways in what's illegal and what's not illegal and their punishments for certain crimes. But for the most part, in every society, I think, I know this, is that a lot of criminals who go to jail will be released from jail and returned to general society. Where we don't really have that idea with social media platforms. The idea of social media platforms is if you break the rules, the social media platform has fully within their rights to just kick you off forever. But also, another reason why this isn't a good analogy is everyone has a right to participate, at least initially, to participate in society in general. No one has a right to participate in some social media platform. So it's reasonable to expect that some or most criminals would be given a chance to return to general society, but much less reasonable to expect offensive users to be allowed to return to a particular platform. Now, A better framework to understand maximum bans is one that parallels the dynamics of social media platforms. Those dynamics being platforms gain from having more users, and users gain from a platform the larger it is. I think what best parallels that is international trade, where all the countries are coming in to trade with each other as freely and as easily as possible under a defined set of rules. So trade between countries is good, not just economically, but perhaps more importantly, politically. When a country is reliant on other countries for maintaining and improving their own economy, they are incentivized to play nice. And so that's kind of the issue and risk of sanctioning Russia. So to kind of make sure this analogy is clear, is if we were to imagine international trade to be like a social media platform, Russia right now is banned for invading Ukraine. But and so the reason this is not is kind of risky is now Russia is incentivized to play even less nice. And so that's why a lot of people like Chomsky or Kissinger, they're always talking about how we need to give Russia an off ramp. So we basically come to them and say, we'll unban you, unsanction you, if we can come to these things, you tolerate your behavior and promise you won't do it again, kind of thing. And I think that's kind of the power of maximum bans, is that I think when a lot of people get banned, I would say there's two groups of people who get banned from social media. People who didn't know the rules or they messed up and they plan to clean up their behavior, and people who don't care to clean up their behavior. But the idea is that if they have a maximum ban and they're going to return, and this is for the people who don't plan to clean up their behavior, hopefully we can incentivize them to where they can return to the social media platform, but every time they come back and they do the same behavior, they're banned right away. And I think this could be easily done. I shouldn't say easily because I don't actually know how automated moderation works at these social media platforms. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I would assume if you've been banned, your account would essentially be on the back end flagged, where the auto moderation would give your tweets, your interaction on the platform, much more scrutiny than it would for someone who hasn't been banned. And I think that's a good system, because I think when it comes to platforms like YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, there's a big incentive to stay on those platforms because they're the biggest. So if you're a content creator, it's highly profitable for you to be in good standing on those platforms. So for example, someone like Nick Fuentes, who obviously is very offensive and probably wouldn't work too well with this system, but it might help. I don't actually know. There's not a lot of research on this. There's generally none on terms of banning, because a lot of social media platforms in general don't want to be too open with their moderation strategy. But it could be that he might clean up his act a little bit so he stays in with good standing on these social media platforms. And that might help moderate his behavior as a whole, which I think we could all agree would be really, really good. But yeah, so Russia is sanctioned or banned, and this isn't good, because this also causes the potential for a fracture to open up in international trade, which isn't good. We want everyone to be on the same international trade system under the same rules that everyone agrees to. Just like a social media platform where all the users are openly interacting with this one platform, so all of our ideas can come together and we can have open discourse from a variety and high diversity of people. Because I think the danger with the current social media moderation strategy is it's creating a large population of people who are banned, and then thus creating the incentive for them to create their own social media platform that rivals the original. And I think that instance right there, that phenomenon, is a big reason why I think social media platforms should take this idea seriously, because I think it would help cut down the incentive for these disaffected banned users to create their own rival platform. And back to Nick Fuentes, he was banned for YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, but he made his own streaming platform, which I don't think is really that good. Because now I think people who get there, get on that platform and watch those content creators, are in this kind of echo chamber of people who have, from my perspective, really bad ideas, like disgusting ideas. I think that's not a good thing, because if they were on Twitch or YouTube, it'd be much more easy for them to happen upon much less radical, much less bad ideas. And they don't, because a lot of people, once they get on a platform, that's kind of the platform they use, especially in terms of video content, YouTube or Twitch. And so I think we're starting to see this fracture in social media platforms where users are starting to self-select into different platforms. And obviously YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter are kind of the incumbents, so they have by far the biggest platform. But I fear that might be changing, especially when you think about someone like Trump, who's even starting his own Twitter. I think it's called Telegram or something like that, or Truth Social. I forget what it is. Which is also not good, because then people who are, Trumpist kind of radical people are going to go on those platforms and interact with, I think, the moderating force of the users on Twitter. And I think this has the potential to spiral in a bad way. Because I think when we're all kind of together, we all kind of moderate ourselves and find a more central position, instead of creating these echo chambers where very radical opinions feel much less radical, because you don't have that other radical to balance them out, to see like both these radicals are really bad. I think we should kind of come towards more the mass market, where most people believe is like an acceptable range of political thought. And honestly, I would love to see what people think about that. I think, to me, it seems like a good idea. I think most people should agree with that. Obviously, not everyone will, because they think, you saying bad words or bad things is causing real world harm. And I think we just kind of have to, accept that some people are going to say some mean things that are going to hurt our feelings. Because I think these radicals who are creating their own social media platform, that'll attract, very likely, a lot of less radical people, but they'll be on these platforms and stay in those platforms and be radicalized further. And I think that's really, really bad. I think it's bad for those people in general, but I think it's also bad for our political landscape as a country. So hopefully we can fix that. But I dream. Maybe one day. Okay. Last topic. This is a bit of a schizo post. Is Metternich and guns. So let's get to it. Let me get my light. It is a little dark in here. Also gonna go pee real quick. Okay. So guns and Metternich. So I was trolling on Twitter like I do, and saw this tweet. One must go forever. Beer, steak, guns, or sex. And I think a lot of people, when they saw this, they thought... I think most people took this as